So I do appreciate everybody joining here today. Really, the whole conversation that we want to have is, excuse me, around soil health. And how do we actually rebuild our soil, get ourselves to a place where our soil is actually contributing and helping us be more successful as farmers. And a really key ingredient of that, again, is the fall application and how we're taking what we have after harvest and actually move those nutrients, everything back into the soil, as well as cleaning up all the debris on top and converting what's below the soil into organic matter. So I'm going to talk about that. But to lay the foundation, I really want to talk about the journey that we're on to get from what we call soil, from dirt to soil. So to start this journey, it really is about, in our mind, the sustainable agriculture and the whole idea of how do we get biodiversity, efficiency, and profitability back into our farms. Historically, if you think about what we've been up against here, the recommendations that have been made to us have been stop tilling, apply cover crops, and give time for nature to rebuild itself. And albeit this absolutely works, and maybe some of you have taken that journey, the reality is it takes time. It's 4 or 5 growing seasons to really turn the corner. And for a lot of people, they see a negative impact, and that transition is difficult. We see a different path forward. We see a way to add life to the soil, let that life take hold, start to improve the soil, and the soil then will tell you when it can accept less tillage. And it will start to perform at a different level, give you more yields, give you healthier plants, and that profitability starts to come about. So you can make the transition to no-till, make the transition to healthier soil, and do it from day one, making money and profit. So that's the key piece of the transition as we see it. And the cornerstone of all of that is microbes, right? So putting life back in our soil is the cornerstone of this entire conversation. In our particular approach, we put it down in the spring at planting, and then we do it again after harvest, because those microbes have very unique roles in both of those environments, and they're critical to ultimately the success of your farm and rebuilding your soil and making the whole system work. So at the core of it, microbes play some interesting roles. One of those in the spring is to eat your fertilizer, right? So it's maybe not intuitive to think, but when you have the right level of biology in your soil, you've got healthy soil. When you put an input down, the biology will actually outcompete your plant to consume it. Well, that's awesome for a couple of reasons. One, it's immobilized. It's not inside of a bug. It's not going to leach away. It's not going to go to atmosphere, so you're holding on to it. 2, it moves to the root zone because that's where the bugs want to live, is ultimately they get fed from the plant, and they're going to live in that zone. So they're in the right place, and they're immobilized. The challenge is you need the whole microbiome to make sure that you've got the predators, or predominantly bacteria, that hold on to your fertilizer to actually release those. And we'll talk more about that. But that release of nutrients becomes a part of nature's food chain that happens in your soil. And so by getting that soil rebuilt and getting that organic matter improved, you start to build the systems within the soil to that plant can actually ask for help from the biology to bring it nutrients as it's needed. And all those activities continue to build your soil itself at the core, right? So those microbes are the very thing that in the fall are going to consume the organic material and convert organic material into organic matter and put more carbon in your ground. So where have they gone? If microbes are so critical in the success of our farm and the profitability of what we're up to, what's happened to them? So some critical factors that I think are all aware of certainly are things like tillage. So if you look at tillage as a practice, conventional tillage, where you're turning that soil over, you're taking biology that should live under the soil and you're putting it on the surface. And when you do that, you destroy it. It will die. One of the most critical pieces of that conversation is fungi. So fungi will actually build a microscopic web throughout your soil. And a healthy foot of topsoil should have literally 10 tons or more of living fungi in it. If you cut through that web of fungi, they will die. Same with protists. If you take protists, which are our biggest bugs, and we'll talk about those, when we move those to the surface, they're going to die. So tillage has been a big contributor to the reduction of total life. This year, being as wet as it's been, one of the other things that a lot of people don't think about is half or more of the larger bugs that should be in your soil are oxygen based, just like we are. So bacteria tend to be anaerobic, but some of those are also aerobic. But the rest of them, the fungi, the protists, the other larger bugs, need oxygen. So if you have ponding on your field and it sits out there for a week and it dries down and you can smell a swampy smell, that smell is biology. So we've killed off that biology and we obviously need to find a way to replace it. We're spraying fungicides, we're spraying pesticides, we're putting chemicals on our ground. Those certainly have the opportunity to hurt, and weather. Severe weather can certainly have an impact on the life in our soil. So over all of those things, as we went to the field, and I personally went to the field and measured a typical starting point, it tends to be very low total life and very bacteria dominant. So our product, we call it Bio 800. Bio 800 is the only truly biodiverse product that we're aware of in the marketplace. We have over 800 species of biology that are alive. We ferment them and we put them on your ground up and running, ready to go. And they really do represent the biodiversity and the microbiome that should naturally be in your soil. We're just replenishing it. We're putting it back in. So now nature has its entire toolkit, everything it needs to deliver nutrients, to consume and break down debris, to do all the things that you need nature to do in your field. That biology and that life back in your soil allows for that. I call it a probiotic for your dirt, right? So if you think about our own body, we require biology or our microbes in our digestive tract to efficiently break down our food and move that nutrient into our body. Our soil is the stomach of the plant. It needs those same things. If we take an antibiotic because we've got a fever or we've got a virus, and we take that for 10 days and we knock back that infection or whatever it may happen to be, we're going to kill the bad, but we're also going to kill some of the good. And so the doctor will say, when you're done with your 10 days on your antibiotic, you need to take some probiotic to get the healthy bugs back up and running. There's never been that solution for your soil. Finally, we have that for your soil. And that's what Bio 800 represents. So when I talk about biology and bugs, what am I talking about? Predominantly, most fields, like I say, when I first enter them and measure them, they're going to be bacteria dominant. Bacteria are the smallest, fastest growing, most robust. They're hard to get rid of. We need them, but again, even through tillage and other things, they tend to survive and continue. So again, usually I walk into a field, you're going to see 90% of the biology in that soil being bacteria only. That doesn't work because it's lopsided. We not only need the bacteria, but we need its predators and we need high population to make the whole thing work. So if you think about a bacteria's job, it is to immobilize and consume NPKs, like all your key ingredients and nutrients as you put them in the soil. They're the biology that's going to do that. And think about that. If you have biology that has successfully outcompeted your plant to hold on to your inputs, you have a motivated plant, you have a hungry plant. I always say a hungry plant is a healthy plant because it's asking for help. It induces rooting. It's looking for rooting. It's looking for nutrients, so it's more aggressively rooting. It's doing its work, and it's asking and using up to 30% of that energy from the sun. It'll put down in the soil to feed the biology to go find it, the nutrients that it needs to keep it moving. Again, bacteria play a critical role in that they do make that plant feel motivated because it doesn't sense it's got a lot of nutrients around it because it's inside of the bacteria. Just as a note, bacteria on a chemistry level is 1 nitrogen to 5 carbons. That's a lot of nitrogen for a small number of carbons. And I'll explain that as we kind of move forward. So the next up the food chain, and it is a food chain, is fungi. So fungi, as I mentioned earlier, could be the most important piece of biology in your field. We tend to be significantly lacking fungi because, again, any tillage, fungal treatments kill fungi. We've done a lot of things that have pushed these backwards, but this is that microscopic web. It actually attaches to the roots and will explore through this web all the nutrients in the soil and actually move those nutrients back to the plant. So in a healthy environment within a fungi, that plant can be exploring up to 1,000 times more surface area of soil looking for nutrients than it can do with its roots alone. Critical role of fungi is they are a predator of bacteria. So as that plant is needing a nutrient that happens to be trapped in a bacteria, it will signal the fungi to start to eat the bacteria. So as it consumes that bacteria, like nitrogen is an example, their chemistry is 1 nitrogen to 15 carbons. So when it eats a bacteria, it's got to release 2/3 of the nitrogen because it's toxic to its chemistry, and it excretes it right in the root zone in a way the plant can uptake it, right? So again, that's nature just doing its job and having that food chain. It also is a major contributor of carbon to the soil. So the more fungi you have, the more carbon that you have in your soil, and the more efficiently that plant can take CO2 from the air, release the oxygen, take that carbon and move it down into the soil, because it's fungi that does that work. So to get that whole carbon cycle working and building the quality of your soil, fungi are a critical piece of that puzzle. As you move one more step up the food chain to protists, so protists, again, are the largest, most aggressive predators. They can eat 10,000 bacteria a day. They're 30 to 1, right? So when they consume bacteria holding on to nitrogen, as an example, they're going to excrete almost 90% of it because it's toxic to them. So they can consume a tremendous amount of bacteria, release a lot of nutrients. They are very active. And in most fields, when we first enter them, there's 0 protists. Protists have been almost completely knocked out of most fields through tillage. We're reintroducing over 70 species of protists back into the system. So we're really making an efficient process. So this is our goal, right? Is to build this cycle. And we need this cycle running in the spring and growing season, and we also need this running in the fall. So it's when we have nutrients above the ground, whether those are fertilizers you've put down or that's corn stover or beans on top of the ground, you want to take those nutrients and cycle those down into the soil. And it's the biology that actually does that. When there are nutrients applied, bacteria consume them, and then the predators will release it to the plant. Once that harvest that crop and you've got dead debris, fungi and protists are the most active in actually decomposing that stover above the ground and moving those nutrients back into the soil to be ready for the next cycle. So again, this cycling is what we're trying to create, and you need biodiversity to make that happen. So again, why is this important? This is just a quick study I'll reference. 230 individual scientists went out and actually studied how does a plant uptake nitrogen. One guy took all those studies, consolidated them, and said, what's the punchline? What did we learn from that? And what we learned was that 36 to 42% of the current nitrogen that goes down for that crop year this year actually gets uptake directly to the plant. The majority, 60% of the nitrogen that plant needs during the season comes from something called soil organic nitrogen turnover. So that's bugs eating bugs. So if you have a healthy environment, you have the right biology, it's really biology that delivers the majority of the nutrient to that plant. And that's why we need to rebuild your soil and have those nutrients available and have that biology as a friend to your plant to make it be successful. P and K are another big conversation here. Every farmer I talk to is consistently adding more P and K. I think most people appreciate that they like to bind to calcium predominantly. And so when you put down 100 pounds, 80% of that gets locked up and is no longer available to the plant. So you're putting down a tremendous amount and making very small amount available to the plant. The thing that can unlock that bank, and most of you have hundreds, if not thousands of years of P and K in the top 6 inches, is biology. So our microbes can actually solubilize that and make it available. So most of our growers by year 2 and 3 have reduced or eliminated the need to add P and K because it's become available from that bank, which has got hundreds of years of stored P and K sitting in it. And that's all a byproduct of building your soil and using this biology. So as we think about the growing season, we think about fertilizer recommendations as removal rates. So what are you actually taking out of the field when you harvest? That's how much you should be putting back in an optimal scenario, right? So in corn, when you remove corn from a field, you're taking about 0.5 to 0.6 pounds of nitrogen per bushel out of that field. That's all you should be putting back. Most farmers that we start with are closer to a pound to try to get to a bushel. So that means you've got 40 to 50% loss or over fertilization to get to yield. And as you rebuild your soil and know that if fertilizer hits the ground, it's getting to the plant, you can reduce that amount and really get down to a much more efficient level of production. Again, P and K, we're going to remove that deficiency from your plant because we're going to solubilize it as that plant needs it. And so again, you've got a big pool there. We're not going to have to tap into new addition to that because we're just going to use what's already in the soil. So again, Certainly in commodity pricing like we have today, if you could be using 30–40% less nitrogen, you could be losing 50 to 100% less P and K. That just contributes to your bottom line. And that's all part of what we're trying to build. And the key message I want to make today and why you're on the phone is that journey continuing, right? So there's a lot of microbial products that are talked about in the spring, but really the critical message we want to have about the second part of this journey is after harvest. So you've now built this incredible crop, you've had a healthy year, you've gotten rid of the disease, all these great things have happened from having good soil, but now you've got all this stover, wheat, straw, bean, stubble on top of the ground. And what do you do with it? How do you ensure that that actually is part of building your soil? And the only way you're going to successfully do that is getting the microbes, because decomposition is bugs eating organic material. So it's decomposition is literally microbes consuming organic material. That's what the definition of decomposition is. So the trick is the toughest part of any grass. So if you think about the outside shell of a corn stalk, that's the toughest part. That's ligna and cellulose. The only bugs capable of decomposing those are fungi and protists. So in order to get that to successfully happen, you either need to till those down under the ground so you can get them down to the bugs so it can be decomposed, or you've got to apply those bugs on top of the ground to where it can happen naturally above the ground without tillage. And that's obviously where we come in. The fall product is just like the spring product. It's got all the species, the full microbiome that we have in the spring, but we elevate the degraders in the fall. So the population of by species of the bugs that specifically eat organic material as a food source, we elevate those populations in the fall and we add slow release nitrogen. So the fall product has nitrogen and an elevated level of degraders. We put that down on top of the debris on top of the ground, and now we are aggressively decomposing that. We are breaking down those nutrients. We're moving those down into the soil. If you happen to be using a cover crop or going into like a winter wheat crop, we're also going to help with the emergence of those because you're still getting all those other beneficial microbes in the soil. So they're going to help with the nutrient uptake of that cover crop so you get a good stand. So all the pieces are coming together, but the primary job we're trying to do here is decomposition to make sure that nutrient cycle is happening in your soil. So why do we care about that? If we think about the nutrient value of your residue. So I'm from Iowa, I'll talk about corn real quick. You think about 200 bushel corn, for every 40 bushel of corn, you've got about 17 pounds of N. You've got 34 pounds of K, right? So you've got a ton of nutrients up there. So you got 5 tons of stover for 200 bushel corn. So you got 5 times 17 on your nitrogen. You got 5 times K of 34. So you got some really big quantities there on your soybeans, on your wheat. There's just a lot of nutrients sitting above the ground, and we're moving those into the soil as we actually break those down. So if you think about what our product is doing, again, you broadcast spray it over the top after you've harvested, right? These pictures you're seeing here are in the fall. These are about 10 days after we applied this to the stover. So again, a couple things there. One, you're looking at breaking open a corn stalk. The fact that you can even break it open is amazing. You can see that the outside is being eaten as well as the inside. So you're truly fully decomposing. Most fields, when I walk into them, even in the spring, you can crack open a corn stalk and it'll still be white in the center, right? It'll still be rigid. And we are completely decomposing it and moving those nutrients down in the soil and alleviating that from the surface. You still have cover, so it's not like you're going to have completely open soil, but when you go to plant through this, it's basically powder. It breaks. And so planting through this stover in the spring is very straightforward. Every time you pick up a handful of stover, you'll look down and you'll see that white moss, which is fungi living. And that's that web that is being built between that debris and the soil to start moving those nutrients. And so we're transferring those nutrients. So here's a picture of Southeast Iowa. This is 200 plus bushel corn, and this is 2 sides of a field. On the right side here, 3 weeks after harvest, we had immediately applied breakdown, and 3 weeks after we applied the breakdown product, we ran vertical till over this, and you can see how significantly we are already seeing the breakdown occur. On the other side, no applied breakdown, but we still vertical tilled this. So this was, again, 3 weeks after harvest on the left, and it was vertical tilled, and you can see what we've done there. Come the following spring, this is that field on the right, not having been touched, right? So again, that was 200 bushel corn. This is March the following year. It was vertical tilled in the fall and hadn't been touched yet in the spring, and you're ready to plant into that with no problem. So again, you're talking about minimal tillage. This particular farmer, and this was the first year we had the product out, so I don't think any of us expected the level of decomposition that we received. So as a practice, we recommend that you put it on in the fall, you leave it all winter, so you maintain that cover, and then you hit it, if you're gonna hit it at all, you hit it with vertical till in the spring. This, honestly, to me, is too open and too bare in the spring for wind erosion. But again, this particular farmer has used the product every year since and is only doing his vertical till in the spring. A lot of farmers, once they experience the breakdown, realize there's no need to even do that tillage in the spring. They're going no-till right into their corn with their beans. So the process itself from a manufacturing perspective is fermentation, right? So we bring these microbes to life, and we elevate through fermentation the population. So we have a really high density of living biology in a tote of material. One of these totes that you see here is 250 gallons. It's a half a gallon per acre. So that's 500 acres worth of product in a tote. On the far right here, you'll see it's wrapped. We do wrap these to keep the light off of them, so UV sensitive. We also refrigerate. So in our storage, after we produce it, we put it into refrigeration at 37 degrees. At 37 degrees, you suspend and shut down the microbial activity so they're no longer eating. We can then hold on to that product for months in cold storage. Once we ship it out, which we wrap before we ship it, that wrap helps hold in the cold and it keeps the UV light off the product. Get it to your place. We do ask you to keep it in your shed, keep it out of the direct light. But now that is going to come back to life, not come back to life, but reactivate, start eating again. And you've got about 6 to 8 weeks to get it down on the ground. That's about how much oxygen and food is in that tote, and then it's going to die. So it is a living product. It does have a shelf life, but it's not ice cream, right? You got a couple months to get it on the ground, certainly in the fall where it's not super warm. The warmer it gets, the faster they grow and the faster they consume the food. But again, it's a very usable product in terms of being user-friendly. In the fall, we're talking about broadcast spray of the product itself. So you're mixing it in the tank with water. We like to see 15 gallons, certainly if it's dry, to get it on top of those beans or on top of that corn and get it soaked in and get them running. If you've had a rain or if you know a rain's coming, you can drop that back to 10 gallons or less. But again, it's all about getting that biology spread across your debris and getting that activated and up and running. But like I said, if we deliver you product in October and you're end of November and you're still doing some final harvest and you're trying to get this down, you still got plenty of time. That said, it is biology. We do need moisture and we do need temperature to really make everything activate. So the earlier we can get it down, the better, so that we can have maximum number of days available to get that biology doing its job and decomposing. So as long as we're above 50 degrees in the middle of the day and it's sunny out, we're going to be working. As it starts to get cold, it's going to then go dormant again. If you go cold for 2 weeks and you come back and you have a warm, January, for a couple days, it's going to start to work again and then it'll go dormant again. Back then in March, when things start to heat up, it's going to get back to work. So you're going to see benefit not only in the fall, you're also going to see it reactivate in the spring, and you're going to continue to see that decomposition as you come into planting. So the journey that I just kind of walked you through for us is this idea of moving from dirt to soil. And again, that's probably not the most politically correct way to talk about it. But again, I will be honest, so many fields I walk into really are dirt by the math, right? So they are bacteria dominant. They have very low amount of total microbial life. If we come to your farm and if you were to engage with our product, we would come and measure where you're at. But the measurements that we look at is the microbial life. So the particular tool that we use has a scale of 0 to 1800 in terms of total amount of microbial life or living life you have in your soil. It's very common for me on the first measurement before applying our product that would be as low as 100 or less. And that's a very, very low amount of total life. And it tends to be 90% bacteria, 10% fungi. So it's very out of whack. In those same fields, because you don't have the biology to do the decomposition, you tend not to have the organic matter levels where you want them. And you're certainly not seeing them grow the way you'd like to see them grow. You're losing nutrients to the environment. Again, we're having to over fertilize because, you know, you're putting a pound of nitrogen down to get to a bushel of corn because you're losing some to atmosphere. There's nothing holding on to it. The biology isn't there to eat it and hold it in the right place. So you're having to over fertilize. And so again, you're losing that. Compaction, interesting, and a lot of people don't understand this, is a microbial problem, right? Most people think, well, I'm driving, you know, over this, I'm creating compaction. The reality is healthy soil cannot be compacted, right? So compaction comes from fungi actually building a bond around the microaggregates in your soil, creating small, you know, the way that Dr. Dave on our side describes it is, if you're sitting here with a 5-gallon bucket of fine sand and a 5-gallon bucket of golf balls, which one's going to hold, you know, absorb water and be able to remain in a position where you don't have compaction? It's obviously the golf balls. And that's effectively what fungi can successfully do in your soil, is bind that microaggregates together. So you've got guaranteed air pockets and water passages down into your soil. That allows for deeper rooting and allows for a lot of benefit. And as we open up the compaction, as we increase the organic matter, you're going to increase water holding capacity. So right now, if you're not holding onto the water, if you're getting those heavy rains and ponding and it's not able to absorb, that's where we define as dirt. As you apply our product, what you would expect to see happen is obviously the biodiversity is going to increase. So as we look at that, it is measuring the amount of fungi or predators in relationship to bacteria. And we like to see that ratio at 50-50. Right? Usually it starts at 90-10. Season 1, it'll get better. Season 2, it gets better. By season 3, and certainly into season 4 of using Bio 800, you're going to get to a 50-50 ratio between your fungi and your produce. And we'd be seeing those numbers multiply. I would expect 4 to 5 times more total amount of microbial life in your soil than when we started. As we get into those out years and into year 2 and 3, you're going to see your organic matter grow. This is one of the things that's probably most surprising to our farmers. Is you'll walk onto a farm and they've got 2% organic matter. They're into year 2. We come out and measure it. Every time we measure your soil, we check your organic matter, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, I increased 0.5%. I increased an entire percent of organic matter in 2 seasons, in 3 seasons. That is unbelievable. Every 1% of improvement in organic matter is 25,000 gallons of water holding capacity per acre. So again, consistently, I live in Missouri. We're near the Missouri River bottoms. We had a lot of rain this season, and you drive by fields and they were completely ponded. I would go to Holganix fields and they wouldn't be. They had the ability to absorb and hold on to that moisture versus ponding, right? So now as we get drier and hotter in the later part of the season, we've got deeper roots that we're able to penetrate that soil. We've held that moisture deeper. We're just not going to feel the stress as things start to dry out. And that just builds to the performance of your yields in the end of the year and the health of your crop. So again, we're building organic matter. We're mobilizing nutrients as that plant needs it. The other thing that a lot of people don't think about is as you build healthy biology in your soil, you're naturally creating disease-resistant soil. So if you have fungal pressure from a pathogen fungi, if you've got healthy populations of good fungi, they will suppress that. So we are seeing consistently in our farmers' fields where tar spot, white mold in beans, a lot of these diseases we are successfully suppressing just because we built a soil that nature has an immune system now up and operating and can defend itself, right? So again, all these great things start to unpack as you make these things happen, but combining the spring application, moving into the fall, again, this fall process is about, you think about organic matter. Roots under the ground, all that organic material sitting under the ground naturally convert to organic matter faster than any organic material from above the ground, like 2.4 times faster. So if we can enhance your root growth and have the biology for decomposition, that's how we can accelerate that growth of your organic matter. We're also breaking down the stover and everything above the ground, so you now have the opportunity to no-till plant into those things. You're getting the nutrients transferred. So that whole cycle in terms of building the health of your soil, putting the life in your soil, allows you to use less fertilizer, allows you, just as an example, one of our growers this spring called me up. He says, I can't really believe this, but if I go back over the last 20 years I farmed this ground, I knew how much diesel fuel I needed to get the planter through the field. He goes, I bought the same amount this spring and I had 600 gallons of fuel left. I saved almost, I think he was using 15 gallons an acre on average before, and he's down to 10 gallons an acre planting because it was just so much easier to get the planter through the field. So it's things like that, that as you change your soil, it has so many knock-on effects. If I can save some money on fertilizer, if I can save some diesel fuel, if I can reduce a tillage pass, because I don't have compaction, I can no-till into my corn where previously I felt I had to work that ground. All these things compound into making this thing a next level farm and really having the impact. So I will open it up to questions, but obviously our question is, when's a good time to start improving your soil? I think like anything, it would have been last year if we could, right? But today you have a viable way with a viable product that you can put on that soil and bring it to life and make a difference, and really start to move the needle on how to do it. So this little guy right here, this is one of our master dealers for Holganix in Iowa. He's sitting with the customer's son, and the t-shirt says Holganix, so there's a farm here for me. So this whole process is as much to me about legacy and making sure that we're creating a farm and farm ground that is there for our kids and our grandkids and is actually in better shape and more efficient, more effective than it is today. And that really comes from rebuilding that soil. So with that, I will pause and open it up if anybody happens to have any questions. Ritu, I don't know if you're there. If anybody has a question, they can just put it into the chat. All right. Well, I do appreciate everybody's time. I do believe we did record this, so you will be getting a link to that if you want to share it. And again, I really do appreciate everybody's time today. I hope it was informative and of some value. Have a great day.